Good evening, class. We're going to get into chapter three of our text. But before we get into chapter three of our text, where we're going to talk about the environment and assessing environment, some other concepts, I want to go quickly back and talk about what we learned in chapter two. Just a quick review, because a lot of these chapters, especially these books from Flat World, tend to build. Chapter two builds on one, chapter three builds on two, chapter four builds on three, and so forth. Or at least they try to build on each other as much as possible. So in chapter two, we talked about vision, and that's what an organization would like to be when, kind of when it grows up, or what the organization would like to be in the future. We talked about mission, and that's basically what an organization, it's their reason for being, it's who we are. It's, again, a reason for organizations' existence. And then goals, and goals help organizations achieve aspirations. Goals are the drivers that help them, an organization or a entity of any type, move from point A to point B. Goals are the mechanisms, metrics, mechanisms, KPIs, whatever you want to call it, or whatever terminology you want to use, helps an organization attain its vision, or helps them secure what they want to be, or what the organization wants to be in the future. So goals are extremely important. And that's when the text or the authors came up with SMART goals. And, SMART, specific, measurable, aggressive, realistic, and time bound. Really catchy type of acronym, or really catchy way to remember it. But at the end of the day, you will find that whether it's this textbook, or it's a textbook about leadership and strategy, or you're listening to somebody on CNN or Fox, or you've paid X number of dollars, or your company has paid a significant number of dollars to send a team or a group of individuals to listen to some high-powered speaker, it's the majority of the information that they provide is just common sense. I mean, take a look at the SMART goals: specific, measurable, yeah, right, aggressive, realistic, time bound. Common sense, right? But academics, especially, and these high powered consultants and individuals that are on the speaker circuit, and your individuals on, especially on TV and radio, they want to be able to put their own little nuance, or put their own little signature on it. So what you will find is individuals in these types of situations taking information that maybe they learned when they were in graduate school, taking it and putting their own stamp on it, rearranging, recombining, introducing some new acronyms. And at the end of the day, you look at it and you say, well, this is just common sense. And also in chapter two, we talked about performance measures versus performance referent. And remember, referent, it's a comparative. So you'll have your own company, or your own entities, organizations, KPIs and metrics. And then you'll have some maybe for a region, maybe for a market or an industry. And that's what you consider when you're talking about referent metrics. And a lot of them on the balanced scorecard, you had financial, you had customer, you had internal business processes, and you had learning and growth. And one thing that have learned over the years is, especially working for Aetna and working for United Health Group, since they have books of business, lines of business across not only the 48 contiguous states, but all 50 United States, and some spanning down into Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. You had to be really careful when you were generating metrics. You had to be really careful when you were generating KPIs and doing a comparison, because the KPIs that made sense for Des Moines, Iowa, might not make the same sense as the KPIs. And when you're doing comparisons to, say, Chicago, New York City, LA, Atlanta, you ran into the same issues with a lot of health plans that had books of business and kind of that southern part of North Carolina, especially down around the military bases in that kind of south part of North Carolina over to the southeastern part of North Carolina. And just the access to health care in that area it was really difficult because there was a trying to build a provider network in some areas. It's extremely difficult. It's the same way if you're in California. People think of California about how progressive they are and how great it is. You get up in that Monterey Peninsula, and it is almost impossible to find providers that are willing to join a health plans network. Same thing in the high desert in California when you're around Barstow. It's extremely difficult in that high desert too. And then you get up kind of in that Central Valley. So there are going to be pockets in every state or pockets in every geographical marketplace that are going to be really difficult for any entity, not only just healthcare, but just entities in general to function. And if you happen to be with an entity in some of those types of areas, be extremely careful when you're developing your metrics and when you're trying to find performance reference to compare to check them to. We also talked about the triple bottom line, the 3 Ps: planet, people, profit. Drive social responsibility. Then they spent some time, and the authors did, talking about CEO celebrities, types of CEOs. We talked about the icons, the scoundrels, the hidden gems, the silent killers, just different types of CEOs. And then they discussed for a few minutes about CEO or celebrity rehabilitation. And most CEOs that are celebrities, there's some skeletons in those closets, and some can be rehabilitated and some can't. And then I think they finished up that section when they talked about entrepreneurial orientation and the 5 dimensions of EO, which is entrepreneurial orientation: autonomy, competitive aggressiveness, innovativeness, proactiveness, and risk taking. Fortunately, in my career, I've worked for a majority of health plans, especially United Health Group, that they embraced entrepreneurial orientation because they knew it was going to be the way to improve efficiency, to improve productivity, and to improve profits. And they were constantly rolling out plans, and they would be willing to provide you the resources you needed, give you the autonomy you needed, as long as you could contribute and come through. So extremely aggressive when it came to pushing that efficient frontier out and trying to identify new opportunities to generate profits. And with that, we're going to start on chapter 3. And chapter 3 starts out evaluating the external environment and discussing the relationship between an organization and its environment. And the definition that the authors provide for environment: it's a set of external conditions and forces that have the potential, remember the potential, key word, potential to influence the organization. And just think about any organization that you work for. Maybe you've been a barista at Starbucks. Maybe you've worked at McDonald's. Maybe you've been out since it's a graduate course. Maybe you've been out in the workplace and still in the workplace, and you're coming back to attain your master's degree because it could be the missing link that you need to catch that promotion, to climb that corporate ladder. But you think about the companies that you're working for. Who are going to be the drivers? What's the external environment? Customers, rivals, social trends, political entities, additional conditional forces. And let's just take Starbucks. Think about the individuals that go into Starbucks: coffee, tea, snacks. I think they've got muffins and sandwiches. I personally am not a coffee drinker, so I don't typically visit Starbucks. But so you've got a certain customer base that customer base, even if Starbucks plays with the prices, that customer base is pretty loyal with Starbucks, even though they're always looking out of the corner of their eye to see what Dunkin' Donuts is doing or see what some of the other fast food chains. You've got Seattle Coffee, you've got Pete's Best. You've got some competition out there for Starbucks, so they're always going to be watching that competition to see what is going to happen to the customer. So the first two things you talk about on the environments, you've got customers and you've got rivals. And I feel like Starbucks is going to be constantly watching that because they want to continue. And I think most people would agree that they happen to be the maybe not the 800-pound gorilla in that coffee. I'll call it the coffee market. It's but they will are pretty much considered the the industry leader in that type of and to me it is fast food service and that type of fast food service. Then you've got social trends. What's going to happen if all of a sudden people decide that drinking coffee is bad for you, that too much caffeine is detrimental to your health? What's that going to do to Starbucks? What if the Surgeon General comes out and says, "Oh my God, you got to quit drinking coffee"? He said it is really detrimental to your health. And at that point, will people take and turn around, and will they switch to tea? Will they switch to sparkling water? How they're going to get their breakfast sandwiches? So social trends, especially with like this mess on TikTok and uh, I guess YouTube and a lot of these social, I'll call them social Facebook, I'll call them social platforms, the social trends drive a lot of the external environment for a majority of companies. And then you've got political entities. Entities are always going to have they governments, whether it's state or federal or local, just cannot help themselves. They, for some reason, think that through policy, that they know more about what's good for the consuming population than the consuming population does. Uh, Typically, governments get involved when they perceive that there is a market failure taking place, and they get in, they play in the sandbox, and they try to shift the wealth, and they try to shift equity-based payments, and 9 times out of 10, they just make things worse. But again, you've got political entities that are playing in the environment, and then there could be additional conditions and forces. Could be natural disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes, um, this winter storm that we're having. I mean, if you're in Buffalo right now, I don't know what, last I heard, 70 some inches of snow. So a lot of weather, a lot of cold weather, a lot of snow, and think what that does to business. Think that what would do to your environment if you were a business owner. Now we're going to talk about, and they like to break the environment down between kind of general environment or macro environment, and then the industry itself, which is more of a competitive environment. And on the general environment, it's the overall trends and events in society, such as social trends, technological trends, demographics, economic conditions. Makes sense. That's kind of your general environment. The industry environment it's multiple organizations that collectively compete with one another by providing similar goods and services or both. Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks Pete's Coffee, Starbucks Seattle's Best, McDonald's Burger King, McDonald's Wendy's, McDonald's Subway. Those which are calling industries are competitive markets. And if you remember from your microeconomics classes, you've got basically 4 types of markets. You've got monopolists on one end of the spectrum. You've got a perfect competition on the other end of the spectrum. And then in the middle, you've got oligopoly and monopolistic competition. Those are typically, and then micro classes that you've had in the past, those are typically the 4 types of markets that they talk about. And when we're talking about firms and their marketing and their production process, every action that a firm takes impacts the world around it, impacts competition in the market, could impact the global economy, but every action that a firm takes impacts to a certain extent the world around it. And the second thing, or one of the second comments the authors make is environment has a greater impact on firms than firms have on the environment. Few firms will have the power to change the environment. I agree for the most part with that statement. I think if for that statement to be true, you've got to take the monopoly or the monopolist out of the equation, because the monopolist can impact the environment around them. But the majority of the time, you have what's considered mutually interdependence or strategic interdependence. And again, it's when one firm makes a decision, makes a strategic decision, it could impact the world and the environment around it. It's definitely going to impact to some extent the competition in a particular market or in a particular environment that's around it. And then the authors ask the question, why does the environment matter? Seems kind of rhetorical, doesn't it? You know, environment provides resources to firms. I can't think of many firms that are self-sufficient. Wasn't it Einstein that said you can't make matter out of nothing? Then if you go back to your micro classes, what are the factors of production? Labor, capital stock, natural resources, which land is, the significant player on natural resources. You've got the technology or the technological processes. And again, the technological processes, it's the black box. It's the production function. It's the production process that a firm has internally, the operational processes. It's that black box that inputs come in one end, spins through the black box, outputs go out the other end. And then you've got entrepreneurship, and that's those individuals that are trying to improve efficiency, trying to improve the production process, and hopefully in return, either improving those processes, bringing new processes to market, new products to market. And they do all of this, and they spend their time and they invest their money with the return of these significant return on investment. You can't, you just, a company can't survive without support of one way or another from the environment. You need customers to purchase goods and services, output. So it's just, that's why the environment provides resources for firms. It is a very valid statement. Environments also sources of opportunities and threats. Opportunities, events, and trends that create chance to improve an organization's performance level. Opportunities are great. Threats, events, or trends that may undermine an organization's performance. Most people will argue that the great entrepreneurs of the world, both past and present, have been able to take and act on opportunities in a way that most individuals couldn't or most firms couldn't. And they've also been able to foresee the potential of threats and act on those forecasts of the impact of threats going forward. So that's where that you've got an opportunity. You've got entrepreneurs working in that factors of production, and they're maximizing opportunities and they're minimizing threats in such a way that they are actually turning some of those threats into opportunities. You want to, I guess at the end of the day, you just have to be careful. And I think the text, either this text or another one I've used in the past, talked about the difference between opportunities and threats. And they talked about Subway and that Jared, I think his name was Jared Fogle, dude that, I don't know, weighed 450 pounds, and he ate Subway sandwiches for a year, nonstop, nothing but Subway sandwiches. And they talked about all the weight he lost. And he was their spokesperson, and he was doing a great job driving it forward. And then all of a sudden, and he was driving it forward and advertising as a healthy alternative to, Burger King and Wendy's and, McDonald's. And they were making money hand over fist. And then all of a sudden they caught him like as the pornographic king or something. And so that was an opportunity, and that opportunity turned into a threat. And trust me, nobody, I can't imagine anybody at Subway uh, being able to forecast that type of issue or that type of threat. It's just beyond comprehension to think about that they could um, forecast that. And environmental trends and events can either be opportunities or threats. Um, think of the 2020 wildfires on the West Coast. That was a threat. It was hard to turn that into an opportunity. COVID, that was a threat that, trust me, nobody in healthcare knew was on the horizon unless it was the origin of COVID, which depends on what side of the fence you fall on. But let's say it was the lab in China, and if you believe that theory, I'm not even sure those individuals knew what they were dealing with. But it got loose, and it was just almost destroyed the healthcare systems in a lot of your countries. But again, a threat that most people would have never been able to perceive. And then lastly, it's talking about the environment shapes the strategic decisions of executives. Um, it impacts long run and short run goals. Your environment, remember when we were talking about goals, most companies have like a yearly goal. Then they have a lot of them have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year strategic plans with goals assigned to them. And think of what, just like COVID, think of the wildfires, think of a lot of catastrophic events that have happened, or a lot of changes through government policy that have happened that not only upset the short run goals, but take a drive a significant influence on long term goals. Uh, start doing business in a new country, try that one on for size. Acquire a new company, and then or sell existing companies. Launch a innovative new product. Think of if those types of decisions are built into your year, 3 year, 5 year strategic plan. Think about what upsets in the environment are going to do to those, what is the best laid plans. And a lot of companies talk about the best laid plans. A lot of companies, hang their best laid plans on, business intelligence. And man, that's one of your common jokes at management sessions is, you want to talk about an oxymoron, talk about business intelligence, kind of like they used to make fun of uh, military intelligence and calling it an oxymoron. And with that, we're going to stop for just a minute. And when we come back, we're going to uh, get into the specifics about just the general environment and some of the elements of the general environment. So talk to everybody in a few minutes. Thank you.